Today's guest is Jairek Robbins, a high performance coach, a keynote speaker, a corporate trainer, founder of Performance Coach University. Whether you're a former athlete, currently a small business owner, or a human being who breathes air and needs to drink water and eat food, this conversation is for you, and I'll tell you why. The central concept of our conversation revolves around the idea of choice, the illusion of it, and the reality of it. And through several anecdotes, Jairek breaks down alternative perspectives we can adopt about our current circumstances in life and what we can do with that. Perspective being the key word. From forces that have influenced us in our early years, and how they may still be driving forces in our lives today, and whether or not we have the choice to break away from them. But there's nothing I can say that's going to top just listening to the conversation. Truly, it is one of the conversations I'm most honored to have been able to have had. Without further ado, Jairek Robbins. I was wondering, where do I start this conversation? And when I think about the kind of work you've done, your own pedigree, I said to myself, what if I ask you, when was the last time you felt too tired, too busy, too upset, too much? And how did you get yourself out of that?
Yeah, lots of times. Probably this morning. I woke up and I have a new workout machine that I love. I bought it for myself as an early birthday present, and I've been attempting to beat my own record every day. And so it's progressively gotten better, but I woke up sore. I was like, oh, my body's talking to me. I was supposed to rest yesterday or the day before, and a friend came over and he's like, oh, let me see how it works. And I was like, okay, let me show you. So I jumped on and did it again when I was supposed to be resting. So then on Monday I woke up sore, but I was like, it's Monday, you can't skip a Monday. So I did it again. And then I woke up extra sore this morning, and I was like, okay, maybe I should rest. And then when that happens, I came up with this concept called automating your motivation. So generally speaking, you don't feel motivated. So what can you do that would, kick the right spark? And so I tend to there's a really good Spotify channel. I think it's called ass-kicking motivational speeches. And it's someone who just blends David Goggins, Eric Thomas, Denzel Washington. They just clip all these little pieces together. And after one of those, you usually feel like kicking a brick wall through. So I listened to that. And then the other thing to make it more personal was I worked with people a long time ago, and they're like, if you woke up and read your dreams every day and your goals and your vision and your habits of how you're going to make it happen and what it'll feel like on the other side, that'd probably motivate people because it's exciting. It's intrinsic motivation, how you want to feel, who you want to be, what you want to accomplish, how you want to serve, what difference you want to make. And then I was like, well, some people wake up and say, I don't feel like reading that today. I was like, okay, so what if you were at your best and you actually recorded yourself full steam, everything you have, passionately reading that aloud, and then remixed it with some of your favorite music. And then on those days where you don't feel like it, you just hit play and sit back and listen and see what happens. And again, so that's a more personalized version. You can listen to other people's speeches, which are sometimes exciting, or you can listen to your own speech about what you really want, who you really want to become, and how you want to feel, and what you want to do, and what difference you want to make. And so generally speaking, I look at those, and with our devices nowadays, even if you had an old school shuffle, you could still just hit play and listen.
Yeah. I'm glad you tackled that, because my mind tells me when people are going to be listening to you for the first time here, at least through the community, they're probably too tired, too busy, as all business owners, anyone trying to accomplish something in life, there's never enough time. There's never enough. So just being able to hear your thinking process behind that really, I think, opens doors, because what I heard was you have to take the time to prepare yourself. And in business, something you were alluding to before we hit record, people just keep running. They just go. They just wake up and they hit the ground running, and some people are just built for this, and others need to build momentum. Do you find that to be the case, that some people who are just built for this, things go the way they go? There's something about their genetics or something like that. And then there are other people who need to like get into a state, need to is this, in your experience, having worked with as many business owners as you have, is this something that you found to be true?
No, it's trained into people. I've had the chance to work. So one of my favorite groups I went and worked with were the pararescue jumpers at Hurlburt, the training base for the Air Force. And they brought me in and they did a trade with me where they'll put me through 2 days of their training if I put them through some of my training. I was like, oh, well, that's exciting. We have the same heart. So I really fell in love with this group of humans just because their motto was first there that others may live. I was like, man, these guys are willing to risk their life to bust their face in to go rescue someone who more or less is in the middle of chaos. And then one of the coolest people I met was one of the field surgeons, where he had his backpack and he showed me all his gear. And I was like, this dude can do open surgery, like real surgery in open fire, heavy combat conditions, total chaos to save someone's life. I was like, it's one thing being a doctor and just think of all the stress that comes with trying to do that in an operating room in a safe, quiet, sterile environment where everyone's working together. It's another thing trying to pull that off while being shot at. Like, I was like, that's amazing. And I talked to them of how they felt and some of the moral dilemmas they deal with, where he's like, hey, when someone gets a major injury, I decide how much of this I give them. And if I give them enough, they'll feel some of it, but they'll have the memories. If I give them more, they won't remember anything and they won't feel anything. And he's like, that's kind of a moral challenge I have to deal with every time a situation happens, of what's the right amount and what's the right thing to do with people. So they have moral challenges, they have physical challenges. There's an emotional side to this, that even though these humans, they showed me their board of active people, and they had green, yellow, and red. And one of the things one of the guys said that really struck a chord was, even though we can get them back to green physically, mentally, emotionally, after so many tours, they'll never be the same color green again.
Oh, wow.
Wow. That's interesting. Like, they will be a different shade of green based on what they've gone through. And it's very difficult to get them back to the original green. There'll be a different version of it. Even though they're green, they're not really all the way back to where they were. And so I hear these things and I look around and talk to some of these guys, and I was like, well, were you just genetically born to do this? No, maybe a bit of a competitive spirit, but no. I was like, were you a swimmer before you got here? That was one of the favorite things. They drown proof me. So they tied me up and taught me how to bob for 5 minutes, which was fun. Luckily, I do like the water. They had snorkel drills where they'd block my snorkel and push me underwater so I couldn't get a breath, and all the fun stuff. And I thought it was fun, but it was obviously serious training for them. And as I was going through it, I was observing and listening and asking an insane amount of questions. So I'm very grateful for them letting me stick around and be curious for 2 days and just ask 1,000,002 questions of all these people in the middle of all their training. But the thing I was looking for is this group of people somehow special? Are they unique? Were they born this way? Is it a genetic thing? And as I met them, it was trained into them. It was something where they might have had a drive to be competitive or wanting to win. My friend funded the research that Carol Dweck did, where they found this growth mindset concept of, they believe in failing forward. They believe you learn skills, you practice new skills. They're willing to show up at something where in the beginning you royally suck at it, and eventually you become okay, and then you're good, and then eventually maybe someday you'll be great. But they believe in failing forward until you become good or great at it eventually. The thing that most people don't see, and my dad was working with the Warriors, and specifically Steph Curry, and he went and watched him and talked with him and was trying to get into his psychology. So he's hit the most three-point shots in games than anyone in history. So he's the best three-point shooter the NBA's ever had. And when he worked with them, he went and asked them, like, How'd you do it? Were you born this way? Is it genetics? And what they found out was he does over 500 live game intensity practice shots a day. 500 a day in practice. And he's already considered the best. But he said, how long have you been doing this? And they went back and found out he's taken in practice over like 2.2 million practice shots. And in the games, he's hit a total of 3,000. And I was like, well, wait a minute. If you hear someone's hit 3,000 shots, it sounds amazing. But 3,000 shots when you've practiced 2.2 million times doesn't sound that crazy. And he's obviously made a bunch in practice too, but the ratio doesn't sound that crazy when you realize how much he's practicing. Going back to those pararescue jumpers, the people I saw who were excelling in the group that I was observing, they didn't just practice when they showed up to practice. I asked them, and I watched a few of them and talked to a few of them. Some of these guys were waking up and doing pre-practice, where they were jumping in the pool and getting in a few drills before the drills started. They were going to the gym after the workout. They were doing things around it that other people weren't willing to do. And willing, not like, okay, fine, I'll try. Willing, like using their willpower to actually go do it when no one else was willing. And so I always look at, is it a mindset? Is it a skill set? Or is it effort? And in this case, the skill set existed fairly similar across the board. They all had the basic skills to succeed. Now, some of them came into the group, and they were unique, who had zero water experience. And then they actually did have a little bit of a tougher time. They were challenged because they didn't know how to swim, or they didn't know how to get tumbled in the water. They said surfers generally did better because they were used to getting tossed around in the waves. They're used to not being able to get a breath. They're used to coming up for air and getting smashed in the face with water. So they were more comfortable underwater. So there's a little bit of skill set differential, but for the most part, they all had the skills by the time I saw them. The mindset, that was varied. Like when you actually work with people and you hear their mindset, what their upper limits are, what their lower limits are, if you've read the book by Jim Collins, he talks about a 20-mile march, what is their rhythm that they'll push themselves to do? How much do they believe they're capable of? And if you can expand someone's mindset and help them reorganize their identity statement of what they believe is possible for someone like them, if you can expand their identity, you'll easily help them expand into a new version of results for themselves. And so the mindset issue is sometimes a little bit of a thing, but then effort was usually the differentiator. Because you could get someone who has less skill, who mentally doesn't know the difference between a better version of themselves and a worse version of themselves. They just kind of show up and do what they can, but they're willing to out-effort everybody else, and they'll go right past them. I think the deadly combination, though, is when you have your mindset dialed in, your skill set really refined and practiced, that 2 million practice shots, like you've refined your skill set, you've dialed in your mindset, and you put in an insane amount of effort, those people tend to dominate. One of my favorite friends runs a course, SEAL Fit in San Diego, where the purpose is, like Mark told me, when people arrive, the very first thing they have them do on their 50-hour crucible experience is hold a 30 to 45-minute plank. I was like, dude, my arms wiggle with like a 5-minute plank. Like, what was the 30 minutes? Like, what are you doing? And he's like, the purpose is not for people to successfully get through it. The purpose is for them to find their breaking point and then decide to keep going even though their body quits. You're going to find a breaking point, whether it's a mental breaking point, a physical breaking point, an effort or emotional breaking point. Like it is set up, it is designed for the human being to hit their break. That's where the mental decision comes in of, oh, my body stopped. It no longer wants to do this. My arms gave out. I'm flat on my face. Can I decide to push myself back up? And all logic says, no, your arms gave out. They're not working. it's built into the training. You find out you're more than capable of pushing yourself back up. Either you find out by you demanding it from yourself, or they have these wonderful, loving humans who carefully come over and inspire you to learn that you're capable beyond what you thought.
Inspire.
Inspire you. They give you a pep talk, I've heard. But that's the 2 million practice shots. They're getting you to do something that in the beginning you totally suck at. And over time, you become okay. You realize the 5th, 7th, 10th time you hit this position, you're like, wait a minute. I've done this before. I know my arms gave out. That's fine. Breathe, push, now, go. And you're like, oh, there I go. Whoa, this is crazy. And so all of a sudden you find out you're capable of more. The question becomes, if you haven't had these experiences, which there's a craving for this in society. There's these groups, there's SEAL Fit, there's, what was that other one called? There was another one that popped up with dads. There's layers of these popping up where men mostly, but some women, but people feel compelled, called to go to these things, to find out what they're made of, to push themselves to the brink physically, mentally, emotionally. And I've had lots of friends go through these and come back and say, that was life-changing. Like that breaking point to find out I could do more than I thought was life-changing. There's a craving for this. People want to find out. And if you study I'll stick with just men for a second, but if you study, there's a book called The Amazing Development of Men. And there's a stage of life we go through where we're deeply curious on what we're capable of. We just want to know what we're capable of. We're not chasing a goal to chase a goal. We're chasing a goal to find out if it's possible for someone like us. And so the truth is, it's not about the goal. It's about finding out if someone like us can do something like that. And no matter how many that's we do, we want to find out if we can do the other one. And so I always call it scaling mountains, and all of us choose what the mountain is in our life, whether it's business or money or girls or muscles or whatever. Like, we have something that looks like a mountain worth climbing in our life. And there's this insatiable desire at this stage of life to climb it. And no matter how many times we hit a peak, like you stand on the top and you look out and you go, ooh, Fuji, I'm going to do that one. And you just go. And then you're like, wow, Mount Shasta, let's go. And like you keep running at mountains. At some point, though, every man has an experience where you hit the thing you were dreaming of or striving to do it. And you stand there and you look around and you realize mountains only have a few things: thin air, a great view, and a walk back down. That's all that exists there. And all of a sudden we have this feeling in our chest of like wanting something more. There's got to be something more than just a thin air, a nice view, and a walk down. And we start craving this feeling of purpose, of something more in our lives. And it's usually where we sit down and we ask, why am I here? And the phrase is, what is worth investing my life into? What is worthy of investing my life into? And we hunt for this thing, and whatever we find or hope it is. There's a phrase I heard in the book, which is, men don't try, we do. And if something is worth investing our life into, we invest our whole being into it. It's not a sampling to find out if it's a good idea. It is a true investment of mind, body, spirit, and emotions, all in. And when you do that, you feel alive, as long as it's a worthy cause, a worthy purpose, something that's worth investing your life into. You will not get those moments back. So you are investing into that. At some stage, usually 45, 55, if you've accomplished all that you set out to accomplish, there's a moment where you stand an inch taller than you've ever been. You feel stronger than you've ever been. You feel more accomplished than you've ever been in your life. And then there's a moment where it's like someone took a needle and like popped the balloon, and it was like, tss, and you see men's presence, their physical presence shrinks a little, contracts a little. And it's a moment where they look themselves in the mirror and they ask the big question was, is it worth it? Was it worth it? Everything I just did it matter? Do I even care? Does anyone else even care? What was the point of all that? And we go into this deep questioning of self. Why am I really here? What we're ultimately looking for is, what's the gift that I believe I was built to share with life? What is that gift that I believe I'm here to give? And we hunt for it, and it doesn't come easy. This can be 6 months or 6 years people hunt for this. And it's a deep questioning of self. And at some point, if we're lucky, we latch on to something we believe is worth our life, is the thing we want to give. And for the next 20 years, the only thing we talk about, the only thing we think about, the only thing we focus on all the time is trying to share that gift with the world around us. The downside is, at this stage of life, we often only feel valuable as a human if we're able to give the gift in a place that people see it, appreciate it, respect it, honor it. If we're in a place that people don't respect, honor, and appreciate, especially the gift, we tend to feel dead inside. Some men evolve to a next stage where they feel just as valuable, just as worthy, whether they're giving their gift or not.
There's this running trend of repetition, training, self-discovery, commitment, finding what's worthy, that this current thread that's been running through this conversation. And, a lot of people listening may be former athletes who decided they want to step into business, right? It could be moms who were put in a situation they didn't like, and they're going to step into business. What I'm getting at is, more often than not, whether it was discovered or what have you, people trend towards business. It seems to be the unlock for many people in their lives to get them to places they simply couldn't get to before, where they tried one way, they got somewhere, as you said, the mountain, only to find the air was thin, only to find that it was a great view, but it wasn't what they wanted. It didn't get them exactly what they needed. And for some reason, people turn to business. In your experience, what have you found to be possibly a cause for this trend towards, well, let me start a business. Let me go into business?
It's heavy influence from media. So if you go back and look at the history of what media highlighted as the dream, if you go back, it was to be a ball player and a famous actress, Marilyn Monroe and Joe DiMaggio. I mean, there's no better life than that. Look at their life. They're movie stars. They're famous. They're special. There's glitz. There's glamour. There's this incredible life facade that goes with it. If you've ever had the awesome chance of going through Hollywood when there's some event going on, smoke and mirrors is the wrong word, but it's pretty close. Because you stand across the street and there's like a homeless encampment going on, but you walk across the street and look which way the camera's pointed, and it looks like this magical place. It's how they make movies. You focus very specifically on this little tiny frame and make it look so incredible. But if you zoomed out, it's not that special. If you've ever been on set in any of these major studios. And so if you go back in history, it was to be a ball player and a movie star. At some point, just to catch us up, I'll do a big leap, be a baller, a shot caller. There are certain songs where they were pushing to be a baller, to play basketball, football, to be an athlete. Like, that was the dream, man. If you could be an athlete, change your life. Not just your life, but you could buy your mom a house, and you could have the cars and the glitz and the glamour and all the stuff. And then if you fast forward, there was this big push on entrepreneurship. Oh, man. I mean, look at the TV shows. Look at who they're highlighting in the news. Look at the stories they're telling. I mean, you could you could build a company and be rich. But hold on, I skipped one that's fun. In the 80s, you could drive a red Ferrari and work on Wall Street. Now you've really made it. Like the suspenders, boom. You were living the life. Like Wolf of Wall Street, you've made it. If you have a Ferrari and Wall Street with suspenders on your suit, boom. Fast forward, Zuckerberg, launch an app. You can become a billionaire if you launch an app that gets picked up overnight and you have 11 employees. You're not even profitable. Boom, billionaire. The newest one, if you can just argue with your sisters, shit, you don't even have to invent anything. I mean, if you got a mom who's your manager and you can argue with your sisters, self-made billionaire.
It took me a second. Yeah.
We found out it wasn't true, but God, they sure made it into the media very well. And so if you keep moving forward, then it was a TikToker. Oh man, if you can, what is it? I don't know how to do it. If you can do the dance, boom, you can get the attention of the whole world. And if you look generationally, if you go ask young people now, what do you want to do when you grow up? Many of them won't say start a business. They'll say, I want to be an influencer. Mm-hmm. I'm like, what the fuck is that? Excuse my language. Influence what? Who? I just want to be an influencer. Like I get a jet like Kylie. I could start my own makeup company. I could ball out. I get all these cars. Have the life. You're like, wow. So the generation next, or Z or whatever it is, they've been sold on the dream of influencerness. Come back to our generation, we were sold on the dream of entrepreneurship. Mm-hmm. Go back a generation, they were sold on Wall Street. And so how does that happen that a generation all leans into a similar concept, believing that's the key that unlocks the piece? The sad part is if you pull it apart, the platforms purposefully picked people and they boosted those people. They built those platforms and they picked them because others would look at them and say, if they could do it, maybe I could do it, which means they're all going to show up and try every day, not realizing that they were picked, they were platformed, the platform itself promoted and funded them, the platform built them. But it built them and showcased them in a way that caused everyone else to stare from the outside and go, ooh, maybe I could do that, which causes a whole wave of humans to try.
There's something scary about the possibility and the realization that there's the possibility that everything we've done has been pre-programmed through a source or some kind of influence that we didn't know was present in our lives every day that continues to shape our behavior to this very day. And
go backwards on that for a second. The majority of humans, not all of them, but the majority of humans, within 5 minutes of being born, you're told what tribe you belong to, religion you're supposed to have, what's possible in your life, what you're supposed to do and not do, how you're supposed to behave. So for most human beings, within 5 minutes of being born, that invisible force is called your tribe, community, family, doctor, hospital, wherever you were at. They all decide those things for you. And so I always ask people, at what stage of your adult life did you pull out a pen and paper, write down all of those choices that were made when you were 5 minutes old, look at and analyze, actually learn, study, and analyze the other options, and then make a conscious choice if that's still the option you choose to do. I haven't experienced this, and I don't know how religious or faith-based the audience or show is. My grandpa was Catholic, and he had a near-death experience. My mom brought him over to the Christian church through a friend of hers that went to Bible study, and she wanted to go. So I grew up with a grandpa who's an evangelist, and he's very passionate about sharing that. So he, from my very beginning, took me to Sunday school, took me to church, read me the Bible, had me learning from the beginning. When I got to college, one of the coolest things in the world happened. It was a Catholic university that required a class for everyone to graduate called World Religions. We had to take this class. It was mandatory. We had to sit in on 5 different religious services of 5 different religions. We had to study all the main tenets of the nine other religions. It was taught by a Buddhist monk at a Catholic university, which is interesting in itself. But I got to sit down and study all the options, or at least the big options that are out there, and then make a conscious choice as an adult. Is this still what I believe to be true? Is this still what I want to practice and how I want to go about my life with it? And then I thought about that and I was like, well, what other things were decided for me at such a young age? Luckily, I have two parents who were studying coaching tools and strategies since I was in my mom's belly. So I got lucky. My mom believed in choice. She wanted to make sure I always had a chance to choose once I was old enough to make a choice. And that thought of, I wonder if we could bring our adult children to the table. My wife and I were just talking. We have a 3.5-year-old son, and we were like, should we start teaching him about the things we believe in? And I said, I don't know if he's old enough at 3.5 to have a choice yet. He's kind of just going to get stuck with whatever we tell him. And I said, why don't we create a plan together where we start to, based on his comprehension level, based on his level of understanding and discernment and be able to make decisions, we can align certain topics throughout his life where we'll study it with him and we'll show him lots of options and we'll help him compare and contrast what's available. And that way he gets the ability to make a conscious choice at that stage of his life when he is fully able to comprehend and decide and decipher. To go back to how did we come to that conclusion? I don't know what large societal influence made us all believe that we need more choices in our life. Most likely raised without many choices causes people to value choices.
Right. For sure.
But that thought of, that seems, my mom helped share that concept of having a choice with me. And she grew up in a generation where you didn't have a choice. Why do you do it? Because I said so. And there's a consequence if you don't act quick. Like there's no choice there. It's someone says something and you better move quickly. Otherwise there's a consequence of some sort coming. Mm-hmm. And so she was like, no, I don't want my kid to have to feel that. That was not a great feeling in life. Why don't we, she presented me with the concept of having a choice. And so that bred into my upbringing. And now my son hopefully will get his ability to have a choice on some of the major topics in life.
And it's funny is I grew up in a way where, like, because I didn't have parents, I'm curious now what you're saying. I was given a lot of freedom in thinking whatever I wanted to think, right? Yeah. But I also feel like there's also a foundation to my identity that doesn't exist because I didn't have such imposing figures in my life, which may be responsible for my willingness to quit almost everything right away and try something else, no matter what I do, no matter how great I've done. And I find that like the most important thing from our conversation so far has been this idea of how we view choice, where it fits in our life. Are we choosing to dive deep into ourselves? Some adults never made it to a point where they took out a pen and paper and really took stock of who they are and what they believe. Yeah. And you've said something that you grew up with something that relates to choice that I think is a very powerful thing that I'd love to close things out on, being respectful of your time here. And that is, you mentioned something about in my research is that whether you think that the good things exist or the bad things exist, they both exist all the time. Yeah. Can you go into how you grew up and how that shaped the way you view the world?
Sure. That's something I just heard my dad say 1,000,000 times. And the statement was, what's wrong is always available, and so is what's right. If someone asked you, how's life? How the last 3 months of your life been? You can look back at the last 3 months, and I'm sure all of us can identify painful moments, challenging moments, hurtful conversations, stuff that completely wrecked us, that we didn't see coming, stuff that didn't go as planned, deals that fell through, conversations that didn't line up, arguments. We can find all those things. Those are natural human experiences that happen. We can also look at the last 3 months. I'm sure we can find a moment of love, a moment of joy, a moment of happiness, a moment that was awe-inspiring, where we saw something or observed something and we're like, wow, that's amazing. Moments where things worked out better than planned, where things came to the thing we were hoping would happen, where the deal did work out, where the client did renew, where we not only hit but exceeded the target. And so the concept is, if you look back at those last 3 months, what part of that do you focus on? And we can sit with I used to say we could sit with two different people, two business owners, partners who went through the same experience, and have partner A tell us everything that was horrible that happened, and that's why the last 3 months were the hardest of his entire life. And then partner B tell us all the great things that happened and tell us that's why the last 3 months were the greatest months of his entire life. And both would be true in the same business from two partners standing shoulder to shoulder. And we go, how in the world does that happen? They run the same business. They're shoulder to shoulder all day. How did one of them have the greatest 3 months of their life and the other one had the worst 3 months of their life? And it came down to which parts they chose to focus on, because both of them went through the exact same experience. Which part of the experience they focused on brought an entirely different experience in their life. So what did they focus on? And number two, what meaning did they give it? What was the meaning they added to the focus? They zoomed in, just like Hollywood. They took their camera and they zoomed in on something. What did they choose to zoom in on? And what did that mean? Two people can have their father die, which they say when your father dies, it's the last man on earth who wanted you to be better than him. And I was like, ooh, that's a statement. Your father dies. Twin brothers. One of them says, that was the moment when everything in my life started working out in the direction I've always dreamed of. And his life was a memory, a testament. It was the foundation, the drive inside of me that caused me to turn everything on and go 10 times further than I ever imagined was possible. Twin brothers. The other brother says, the day my dad died, that's when everything fell apart in their life. Nothing else worked out. He missed them so much. And because his dad died, he lost all drive. How in the world does that happen? Twin brothers, same father. One of them was inspired from that moment by the meaning they chose to give it. The other one was devastated from that moment on because of the meaning they chose to give it. And so perspective, which part we look at, and then meaning. What does that mean? Does that mean it's over, or does that mean it's just the beginning? Does that mean now it's really possible, or does that mean all hope is lost? And so if you can help someone, one, learn to focus on the part that's most useful. A lot of people say, focus on the positive. That's not always useful. Because you go, oh, what's useful is we better focus on what could go wrong. And what that means is we will be fully prepared. We've got this. Or we better focus on what could go wrong. And what that means is we're about to get our ass kicked. Maybe we should just give up. But focus on what's useful is one of those little adjustments that I heard too many people say, well, just focus on the positive. I'm like, that's not always useful. Find a mentor. Find someone who's done it. Someone who can take 20 years or 40 years or 50 years of experience and turn it into a few hours of here's how to navigate that. I found one probably 9 years ago now, and I started working with them. Our business grew 142% in 3 years. We started making more profit in a month than we used to make in a year. And it wasn't because I magically changed everything we were doing. He just showed me what are the key adjustments I needed to make, the little intricate adjustments, and all of a sudden, boom, everything took off. The hard part about that is knowing which ones are full of crap and which ones are actually good. Yeah, that was the hard part. That's a much longer discussion to try to sort through what to look for. I just found an old guy from Texas who'd been doing this for 40 years, and he was a teacher. He was not a pizzazz guy. He was a math guy. He was funny. He's the first guy who made me love numbers. I hated math in school, and he was the first person I actually enjoyed doing math with. But find that person who knows how to help you make those little adjustments that'll make all the difference.
And then just before we close out, I promise this is the last thing here. One of the things I found most useful that I don't think enough people do, and you wrote about it in your book, Live It, is to take the time to map out what your day actually looks like, your perfect day, your day.
Yeah.
And have you found that you've needed to revisit that over the years?
Totally. My perfect day, and let me give this contrast real quick. I just saw an interview years ago with Jim Carrey, and I saw a recent one with Will Smith, both saying similar things. Jim Carrey said, I wish everyone would achieve, accomplish, and get everything they dream of. All the money, all the fame, all the fortune, all the freedom, everything they dream of, to realize it ain't it. I was like, ooh, that's interesting. And I was like, well, he's been labeled crazy and all this stuff. And then Will Smith showed up saying the same thing a couple of weeks ago. He's like, I spent the whole first half of my life trying to accomplish everything I could dream of. Awards, all the things, the money, the fame, the fortune. And he's like, I did most of it. He's like, at this stage of my life, I wish I could tell people none of that will make you happy. None of that will fulfill that gap inside of you, that insatiable hole of hunger that just thinks that next thing is going to finally do it. He said, it's fun, it's exciting, go for it, but it's not going to fulfill that hole that so many people have. That ideal day is the thing. The question is, if you found out you were going to die in 30 days, how would you choose to live every one of the next 30 days? And 30 days is too much for some people, so I said, pick one. If you had one perfect day, what would that be like? Where would you wake up? Who'd be with you? How would you feel? What would be possible? Where would you go? What would you want to accomplish? What would you want to give? What would you want to create? What would you want to be part of? Who would you spend your time with? What would you go do? Who would you have lunch with? What would you have for lunch? What would the conversation be like? Fast forward, what would you be part of? What would you partake in all afternoon? Early evening hours, sunset, would you stop and watch the sunset? Experience the miracles of life unfolding before your eyes? Be present and experience the preciousness of just a moment, a breath, the feelings you have, the experiences of life? What would you do for dinner? Who would you have dinner with? What would you do to wrap up? What final pieces, what would you be grateful for on that day? If you went through that day and you could identify one perfect day, and all you did was wake up every day and make it a goal to make that day your life, that fills that little void. That fills that space in our hearts where you're like, you know what? If this is all I got to do, and when I shut my eyes tonight, I'll never get to open them again, that would be a day worth living. And for some people, I warn them, when you first say that, people are like, well, margaritas and Mai Tais and the beach, man, that's what I would do. I'd ride bulls and skydive, and that gets old after a couple days. You give yourself 10 days to do that. You'll be like, now what? So, and I've talked to people. My business mentor, he retired himself back in the 80s. He was a giant real estate developer, made hundreds of millions of dollars, flying private, retired himself, moved to Hawaii, golfed for 6 months, and then was bored out of his mind. Moved back to the United States, made a couple bad decisions, and landed up losing everything and landing up $100 million in debt to the government. He sent me a picture. He said, this is what my mentor sent me in 1982, I think it was. It's a guy laying on his back outside of a doorway on a street with people like stepping over him, cigarette hanging out of his mouth, overgrown beard, Jack Daniels bottle on its side next to him. And he has a little sticky note on it, and it says, you. And he's like, I sat around, grew my beard, starting to think about what's the purpose of life. And he said, I'm laying on the couch, got an earring, started just questioning everything. Some dude with giant teeth showed up at 3 a.m. on the infomercial telling me he'd help make me rich. I was like, I need money. This guy will help make me rich. I'm going to do it. He said 10 minutes later, after listening to the guy who said he was going to make me rich, I'm sending him money. Something was wrong about that statement. Yeah. Then fast forward though, and he ran into my dad at a time in his life when he was considering, I think he said, making a permanent decision on a temporary feeling. Mm-hmm. He said, please don't ever make a permanent decision on a temporary feeling. Feeling will pass. Mm-hmm. Stick with it. Reach out to someone you love and care about. Just talk to them. Luckily, he found someone, or someone found him at the right time, and he decided not to make that permanent decision on a temporary feeling. He got his little cassette tapes. The only thing he had was his car, so he sat in his car for 18 hours straight, listened to him, got his shit back together, set some goals, set some visions, repaid all his debt, went bankrupt, came back, rebuilt everything. By the time I met him, he was late in his 70s, and he had, a few years into working with him, he exited his whole portfolio of businesses. So he got an 11x multiple on 10 million a year of EBITDA. So he got $110 million put in the bank. And now he just kind of shares what he knows with people. And so that thought, though, of that perfect day, all the stuff ain't going to make it perfect, but who you're with, how you treat them, what gifts you can share with them, internal gifts, laughter, joy, love, caring, presence, listening, that'll help fill that void.
Absolutely incredible. I mean, expected nothing less. I'm very grateful for you to stop by. Where can people who have listened to you just now connect with you, preferably for whatever channels that you have available?
Yeah, just go to my website, JarekRobbins.com. We just added in the product section a whole lineup of personal development stuff of how we can engage with people, from training them to become a coach to just the book and everything in between. So we'd love to be able to support them.
Right on. Again, thank you so much. That makes the end of this conversation just amazing.
You're so welcome. Thank you for having me.